Welcome, love and abundance to everyone. Thank you for joining the What's Your Story show. This is your host, Dr. Varun Gandhi. Today we have a special episode with on a very important topic. I mean, today's discussion is extremely important, especially what we've gone through over the last couple of years with the pandemic. Today's topic is extremely important. So before we talk about it, I'm going to do a water ritual that I do every time I'm on live. Essentially, I want everyone that's watching me right now to take your water and take a sip out of it. I've realized that most people don't drink enough water, and this is my reminder for everyone to drink more water. So pick up your drinks. Let's all cheers. Let's take a sip. All right. Well, so what's your story? This is a show about stories within the Indian community, right? We're going to discuss issues, challenges, stereotypes, limitations. We're going to talk about ways that we could unite to support each other, build ourselves up and our community together. So today's topic is mental health. I've covered this topic many times on the show before. But every time, every person that I bring on has a unique story to share. And we're going to continue in the future covering these stories as much as we can because, look, we have to break the stigma. I mean, it's up to us. Oh, wait, hold on. Break the stigma. So today, every time I say break the stigma, we're going to be playing that. So today's goal is, look, we're going to talk about mental health, the conversation that we have not had too often in our communities and our families. Life, as we're living life, we go through ups and downs, right? Everyone has that. The things that bring us joy, we celebrate and we go hard. Things that bring us down, we get depressed and we go hard, even in the depression. By the way, everyone that's watching, share this, like this, please hit the subscribe button, like it with everyone, share it, invite your friend over. We want to talk to as many people as we can together. And so we have more participation in this conversation. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments below. Hey, Nicoletta, how you doing? It's been a long time. Good seeing you. Anyone else, please put some comments. Would love to hear from you. Okay, so as we're going through our life's ups and downs, we face these downs way too often, right? Over and over again, we're down, and we don't give ourselves a chance to recover, to get back to our base level, right? So we're constantly moving in the wrong direction, and this cumulative effect, one challenge after another, one issue after another, where we continuously add to it and pile onto it, and this like a long-term effect, us not having the tools to deal with these issues that come on a regular basis, we start disconnecting ourselves from the real issue. We're not really now we're more in the fear of the issue. We're not really focused on the solution. We're just focused on the fear behind it. This mental health has been always around. The issues, challenges in our communities, in our societies have always been there, right? Even before the pandemic. The pandemic has only made it worse with the social distancing, with the quarantining, the isolation. I mean, the pandemic has truly done a number on everyone, especially in terms of mental health. And this conversation is not had very often. We've talked a lot about vaccines, we've talked a lot about COVID, we've talked a lot about all the other issues, but mental health has not been brought up. And probably is not. There are not a lot of studies been done on this, mental health during this the last couple of years. So there's a couple. As I was researching this topic, I wanted to kind of bring some surveys, some research that was conducted. So one thing I'll bring is a research review that was published, and then another one is some data that was statistics that were published as well. So the statistics is that so this was a survey done with cities in India. This was done by an organization that was kind of founded by Deepika Padukone, who's a Bollywood actress, and she found data saying that 47% of people are relatively more aware of mental illnesses, but they show stigma and they judge people to the extreme when they find out that someone has mental health issues. That's an appalling statistic. 47% of people. 26% of people are fearful of people with mental illness, and they kind of shun them. They call them a retard. They believe that people with mental illness are more prone to violence and they should be literally excluded from society. That's an appalling statistic. And the last one is only 27% people are compassionate and show support of people with mental health issues. So this is what we're dealing with. We have such a stark difference in how people understand mental health, right? So now here comes the other portion. This is a study done by the Lancet. The Lancet is a highly recognized journal. Journals are ranked on something called the impact factor. So Lancet has an impact factor of 79.2, which is meaning every paper, every article that's published in this journal has at least been cited by 70 or 79 other papers, meaning so many people rely on the research that is published in this journal. So it is a highly valued journal. So this journal, they published a review saying that, this is what it says, that the separation from loved ones, loss of freedom, boredom, and uncertainty can cause deterioration in an individual's mental health status. So separation from loved ones. Well, Indians, naturally, we're social. We want to hang out with people. We love eating with people. We love, enjoying people's company. Well, during the pandemic, we didn't have this chance. We were isolated. So we all naturally had separation from loved ones. Then loss of freedom. That's another reason. That's another reason that they found in this paper. Loss of freedom. That's, forced lockdowns, not being able to walk outside, not being able to go outside and meet people, even though I know some people kind of broke the rules and did our own thing. I've heard a lot of those stories, but, we won't talk about that. And boredom, now think about long-term, sitting at home, not having things to do. You watch all the TV you can, watch all the Netflix you can. Now what? Boredom. And finally, uncertainty. You hear everything on the media. You don't know what's going to happen. It's always this way, that way, and always moving in all opposite directions. So this is what we're dealing with. This is what the pandemic has put us through. And today, I'm going to bring on our guest now. Today, we'll be speaking with Mrinal Gokhale. Let's add her to the stream. Welcome, Mrinal. Hold on 1 second. All right. So a little bit about Mrinal before I ask her the first question. Welcome, Mrinal. How are you doing first?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? Thank you very much for having me.
Doing fantastic. Thank you. So Mrinal is an Indian American first-time author. We'll talk about her book. And she's a former news reporter with a passion for wellness and the human psyche. Her first book called Saya Unveiled. It has 11 true stories of second-generation South Asians and their journeys with mental health. We'll talk more about it. Her goal is to reduce stigma and increase acceptance and education between immigrant generations. Hold on, I gotta play the sound. All right. So, Mrinal, tell us, what's your story? How did your journey begin in mental health?
So, I am not a mental health professional. I consider myself more of a mental health content creator slash educator. So, as you said, I am a former freelance journalist. I used to work for two minority owned publications in my city, Milwaukee, which is the most segregated city in the whole country of the United States. And throughout my career there, I covered a bunch of events regarding Mental Health Awareness Month, where I would write about stigma in both the Latino and African American communities surrounding mental health. And throughout that, I felt that talks around stigma in the Asian community was lacking. And so that's why I thought that writing so that's why I chose to write a book about it, to be able to bring those stories into the spotlight and to help people that are of Desi origin feel more heard and less alone and better informed.
So, do you have a personal story as far as your personal journey within mental health, and how did you come to it?
So I'll say that throughout childhood, I struggled with both academic as well as social emotional learning difficulties, and I never had them professionally treated. And this caused me to feel very, I guess, deficient and like something was wrong with me. And I internalized it all for so long. And I think that my story of not having gotten help, despite knowing so many, despite having met therapists in adulthood that questioned why these things were never brought up to professionals in childhood, brings up talks about things like race and gender in terms of underdiagnosis, and things like the model minority myth too. So basically my social emotional learning difficulties were basically that I was painfully shy and also struggled with reciprocal communication. I craved human company, but only to a point, I think, too. So I had a very introverted personality too. And I felt as though I was made to feel inferior for these sorts of things rather than embrace them and find ways to kind of own them and become my best self with them. And then academically speaking, year after year, I would get in trouble in school for things like missing instructions, not following directions, being messy and disorganized. I couldn't finish homework unless my parents were sitting in the same room as me until it got done. So I graduated high school with an A- average, got a bachelor's degree, but it was a rough road. And thankfully, I had two parents that have advanced degrees that helped me along the way throughout it all. But at the same time, it says something that if I would have had that one-on-one care in the school setting, that could have taken off work on their end and thereby also helped me feel, I guess, less, bad about my struggles.
Right, right, right. So you mentioned a little bit about the model minority myth. I want to talk a little bit about it. So can you kind of share more about it? What does it mean, and how does it apply in this context?
So, my definition of the model minority myth, if someone were to ask me what it means, is the false ideology, I should say, that someone belonging to a minority group is superior or has traits that other um, minority groups should be modeling in order to be successful or quote unquote good people. So in this context, or in my story, a lot of people will agree that Asians are seen as the model minority myth. And if I were to put my journalist hat on, it's like you'll see the Indian kids winning spelling bees. You'll see that Asians, both Southeast and South Asians, are portrayed to be the doctors, the engineers, the IT professionals, the successful gas station entrepreneurs type thing in the media, as well as that's something that a lot of people are used to seeing too in real life. And I think that most South Asians that I've gotten to know and have known will agree that the stigma of academic inferiority growing up for them as children was gigantic. And so I think things like that can also contribute to underdiagnosis when it comes to the mental health or neurodevelopmental health realm, in terms of how these immigrant generations in Asian groups may kind of put their kids on pedestals because they want them to fall in line with this model minority myth that's just kind of been set up for them in their community.
Yeah, it's
And they
like
feel
chasing.
that things like saying that my kid has XYZ disorder, syndrome, mental illness kind of causes these dreams of theirs to fall apart.
Right. So it's kind of like having this idea that we have to be a certain way and have certain accomplishments, and kind of always striving, running behind that, and always chasing that. I was part of that. I was living that life of running from the next degree to the next degree to what's the next job, and then finally I had to break out of this myself, because I realized I was not happy in that old system. Being in this job, I didn't really care for that consulting job that I was part of. All right. Anyways, enough about me. Through this, and then how did your parents or older generation, like, what have you seen in terms of like the older generation, and how did they usually react to someone who has mental health issues, or when they hear mental health, what comes to their mind?
So one example that I can think of is that one of my parents was shocked when they learned that every single individual in my book either works or goes to school. So I think that that says a lot in terms of not seeing mental health as a spectrum. Now, again, putting on my journalist hat, I do think that U.S. media, not just South Asian media, doesn't do the best job in portraying mental health as a spectrum. They only tell like the most dramatic stories and may make readers think that people with mental illness are like dangerous or have zero capacity to take care of themselves. However, I think that being that medicine and therapy are Western invented principles, it's severely underutilized in South Asia. I think that they're even more behind than the Western part of the world in understanding mental health as a spectrum that every person is on. Like, I think they understand that everyone has physical health. They don't necessarily, there needs to be more education to teach our community that mental illness and mental health are two different concepts, and that it's a wide range and anyone can be on it, no matter how good of a job you did as a parent, no matter how privileged of an upbringing you had.
What do you mean by mental health as a spectrum?
So in terms of, okay, so let me say it this way, and I'll illustrate with the story, I guess. So a few
Perfect.
years ago, I participated in group therapy, and one of the participants says that he's high functioning bipolar. And somehow the topic came up about how he is uncomfortable when people ask him why he took long to graduate college, and because it's because of his hospitalizations. And when the therapist said, what is it that makes you uncomfortable to say that? He was like, well, every time a mass shooting takes place in the news, reporters say that the suspect is either schizophrenic or bipolar.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's okay. So that basically then that became his perspective, right? Like that's how he saw people.
Yeah. And think about how amplified that type of a perspective is in a part of the world where going to therapy is not a norm.
Right. And then the media only magnifies that, right? Because they only report whatever they want to sensationalize, whatever gets the ratings and whatever gets more people to watch their to the show. And so media just wants to hype up those small incidences, right?
Yeah. And then I think even when it comes to Mental Health Awareness Month, reporters should also shouldn't just talk about stories that involve people who recovered from psychosis. Yes, those stories count, but what about things like social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, ADHD, OCD, mild depression? They count too, and they may not be as dramatic sounding as the ones that are currently in the media, but telling those stories can teach people that regardless to where they are in the mental health spectrum, they should not be afraid to seek help. And just because they're not on the far severe end of the spectrum now doesn't mean that they don't one day have the potential to be if they don't seek help.
Right. Why do you think they're not talking about these other issues? I mean, and what can we do to get them to speak about it? Because these are daily occurrences. Like we go through that on a daily basis, and anyone has the chance to go down that path, right? you choose to, or sometimes it's, it's just this the only path. But I mean, what can you tell them?
In regards to why they
Like, what can
choose
you?
not to.
So like, what can you? Like, what can we? Like tips. What tips can we give them so that to kind of help them understand that, look, mental health is, wide ranging. There's a spectrum. We have, we can fall anywhere in the spectrum. So what tips have you developed through your journey for that people have understood this concept that mental health is a spectrum?
I think that the skill that I know is storytelling, such as
Mm.
like I told you an example of my own story a little bit right now. So, I feel as though when it comes to the functioning labels of mental health, they're both helpful and harmful. I know that a lot of people seek to destroy them. I think they're helpful when it comes to teaching somebody that two people can have the same disorder but are affected in different ways by it. And one person may be affected in a more immediate, life-threatening way and need more urgent help in it, but that doesn't mean that we should pick and choose who we want to help based on the functionalities. I think that the functioning labels should be chosen to determine what type of help someone needs. And as I had stated before, from a journalistic perspective, I want to hear the stories during Mental Health Awareness Month of people who dealt with things outside of things like psychiatric disorders.
Mm. Um, in your book, you share many different stories.
Yep.
What are some of the common threads you have found in each of these stories? And also, what are things that people like? You mentioned one thing that your dad, or I think your parent, kind of realized something through the book that shocked them. Right? There was someone who had read the book and that shocked. They were shocked about something in the book. So, what are certain things that people read the book and they're shocked about it, that they don't really recognize that, oh, this could be true as well about mental health issues?
So I think what you're referring to is how I said earlier that one of my parents was shocked that every individual in the book works or goes to school.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So after reading my book, one will realize that things like not every person in the book has even a diagnosis on the record. Not everyone in the book required therapy to get through to be able to get through their mental health challenge. Not everyone who attended therapy benefited. Not every and some and others did. Not everyone who tried out psychiatric medicine benefited, whereas other people did. And I think that when I got people who are interested in telling their stories, when I heard of people that never did any treatment or never were formally diagnosed with something, I was kind of thrown off at first, but I was like, no, this is good. It'll teach readers that you don't have to be on the quote unquote severe end of the spectrum of mental illness to benefit from professional services such as therapy. And you don't just go when something is severely wrong with you. You can go for self-improvement purposes too.
So what are you mentioned, one form is therapy that may not work for everyone. What are other alternative treatment methodologies that people could go?
So in my book, you'll find that some people found healing just through changing some of the circumstances in their life and their circle and who they're around. Some people found healing through the holistic realm, such as yoga.
Mm. Wow, yoga can do that, huh?
Yeah, there's a story in there like that. Don't want to give it away, but I'll say that.
Okay. That's very interesting. And then, so other things about your book, I want to dive deeper into your book. If you can share, something more about the book, and also where people can find it.
Okay, so and I forgot to mention when it comes to patterns that I found in a book, I'll say, and I'm sure that this won't surprise everyone. Number one, anxiety and depression were the most common reported things that people discussed. And they are some of the most common mental health disorders out there. But then also you'll see the range of spectrum from different people's stories and how they dealt with it and experienced it. You'll see the pattern that a lot of people were hesitant to tell their parents they were struggling, and
Why is that?
um and what?
I said, why is that? What were some of the
Because
reasons?
well, and I think that goes back to stigma in terms of the ideology that admitting to struggling with mental health is like admitting defeat or fear that they won't get taken seriously. And then that goes with the other pattern I found, that most parents did not take their kids' mental health seriously until it got to an extreme. And another pattern I found is that the ones who said they had parents that were that immigrated to the West at younger ages were the ones that were a bit easier to educate when it came to their mental health journeys, in
Okay.
comparison to the ones who like waited till they were 20s plus to immigrate and like were married and settled. And
Have you found any commonalities between, so the parents who have come here a lot later, right? Have you found any commonalities in how they view mental health or mental health challenges?
The pattern that I found in the book was that they were the ones that did not take their kids' mental health seriously until it got to an extreme point.
Is
And
there,
I think
you
that
know why?
goes back to our stigma about in our community about the ideology that something must be extremely wrong with you in
Mm,
order to require professional help.
okay.
And I
Uh,
also would like to add that another thing I've kind of been told as I've been researching this topic more is that the generation that first immigrated to the West faces, the acculturative stress of having to acclimate to living in a new country and whatnot. And being that they didn't come from a country where seeking professional help was the norm, they also didn't get professional help here. So there's a possibility that's kind of where the ideology originates, that you should not go seek professional help until the problem's severe.
right. I can attest to that. I moved here when I was 15, and when I first moved here, it took me a while to get used to the culture here. It took me a while to let go of my past, let go of my friends, let go of everything that I was familiar to, and settle into the culture over here, because it's very different. I moved from Dubai, very different back then in 2000s, 90s. Now the culture is very different there. And when I moved here, it was a complete culture shock. So it took me a good 3 to 6 months of crying every morning to finally get accustomed to life here. I didn't really want to go to school, and that's what I'd cry about. So intergenerational healing. You mentioned that a little bit through this talk. Why do we need intergenerational healing?
I think it's to reduce the generation gap in terms of education and acceptance surrounding mental health. And what I mean by that is I think a lot of us will agree that when it comes to the generations of immigrants that came to the West before us, a generation gap not only means an age gap, it means a cultural gap too. And with this cultural gap, in the context of my book, comes the extra barriers one must face in order to feel as though their mental health matters and be able to be proactive in seeking treatment for it. So you'll probably realize in my book that in addition to telling the person's story, I also try to be informative and data heavy. I cite statistics regarding mental health similarly to how you just did at the beginning. I talk when someone tells me they got diagnosed with blah blah blah. I state in the book explicitly with footnotes how it's defined in this by the American Psychological Association, so, and common symptoms that are defined to come along with it, so that someone reading it will know what it is and perhaps feel if they meet someone struggling with something similar, they'll be able to pick up on potential signs of it.
So your book contains not only stories, but also like science, research, data.
Yes.
Like it's a holistic view around mental health. And specifically, is this all within the Indian, like South Asian community?
Yes, so everyone is of Indian, Pakistani, or Bangladeshi descent who told their stories, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
In terms of like, I used American Psychological Association, NAMI, like those types of orgs to talk about what conditions are and the symptoms to look for, though.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
And I will say that when it comes to intergenerational healing, I've had people, my parents have, helped me sell the book to their friends and family members, like extended. And I've heard, and people have said to me, I never knew the stuff about what Indians in your generation go through when it comes to living in the West. And one of my favorite compliments was that someone said to me, a friend of ours, I saw that a lot of frustration was revealed in these stories that you told, but I also think that they also convey a sympathy for the elder generation of immigrants.
Ooh, wow. Okay, that's so it's appealing to all generations essentially.
Yeah, and I want to make it so that someone who wants to educate someone else in their family feels comfortable giving it over to them as a
Right.
starting point.
Yeah, yeah, and you want to make them comfortable through the whole conversation because it's a little difficult. Some, like grasping a new concept, it can be hard for people. Change. What self-care strategies do you have that you've tried that have worked for you, or you've heard that has worked for other people?
So I'm one of the few people I know that sees both the Western and holistic realm as equals because I have benefited from both of them. And
Mm,
so what I mean by that is I have benefited off of cognitive behavioral therapy for my social anxiety. And I have benefited off of psychiatric medicine for executive functioning struggles and mild depression. And I also benefit from pranayama yoga
mm.
and a little bit of meditation. And I'm quite into fitness too when I remember how to do it. And I've also dipped and dabbed into a lot of fad diets and seen holistic nutritionists too until I found one that's right for me.
What is pranayama yoga?
It's breathing based. You don't even have to do any moves or stretches. If you guys do a YouTube search on Baba Ramdev, he's the one who made it popular in India, and it was actually my mom who introduced me to it. And it's something that, since it doesn't involve movement, I can just do it a couple minutes a day in my bed before I start my day every day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask it. What's your ritual behind it? Um, but okay, I know you have some background noise, and that's okay. Not an issue. What tips do you have for someone someone's going through a hard time right now, and maybe their parents are not understanding of them. They're not listening and really being there for in like true presence for their child. What can you offer them right now? Something that would help them.
So I can understand their pain, but I would also advise them, I would also tell them that if the people who you wanted to be there for you are not being there for you, you have to create your own system, whether that be that of your friends or a counselor and therapist or a community that you build through a local meditation class type thing. You need to build build a community, find other people who have dealt with similar things and that you can lean on. If you can't meet them, read about them and find it to kind of move through this adversity you're facing. One of the biggest lessons, one of the biggest takeaways I got from the book is someone in the book told me that they learned healing is nonlinear, and that's something that I.
Yep, she's all right. She's having some connection issues, I guess. Hey, I think I can see you now. Hey, Muriel.
I see now too.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know where I cut off.
Um, so you were offering that if someone is going through mental health issue right now, you were giving them advice on finding a community, finding friends, finding people that outside of your family, outside of your current support group, finding a new support group. So one question related to that I had is, are there any other, not organizations per se, And there are organizations, I'll get to that later, but I want to say like communities where people get together already that you can kind of join in, like a support group maybe or something. Do you know of any? Are there any that you can suggest?
I feel like it depends on what part of the world you are. Um,
But is
but
there like a some like Toastmasters, for example, has little small. Every city has their own Toastmasters, and they get together and kind of practice speaking. So I'm wondering if there's something like that for mental health that you've come across.
um, if you're talking big organizations like that, NAMI is one I can think of. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention has multiple branches. If we're talking South Asian community, Soch is one I'm a big fan of because they offer virtual options too, even though they are technically Canada based.
Okay, okay. And what does Soch do? What do they have?
So they're founded by two Punjabi nurses, and they're based in Canada. But they, like I said, they do virtual events. They do things like informative talks and lectures about
Hmm,
mental health and health in general in the South Asian community. They do like grief support groups, for example, parental support groups, that kind of stuff.
okay. One of the questions I had, we may have briefly gone over this, is we got a shout out for Nami in the comments. So love Nami. Um, and someone said they're looking forward to purchasing and reading your book. So that's exciting. Woohoo!
It's on
And
Amazon.
oh, it's on Amazon. All right. What I'm gonna do is in the link below, in the description below, in the Facebook comments, I'll also post the link. So Reno, send me the link for the Amazon, and I'll start posting it in all these different places.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you so
add
much.
that it's on all websites that have it's in all the Amazon websites. So if you're in a country that has Amazon, it's on there, but I'll send the US one.
Okay. You know what? I will put the name as a banner. So search for this book. That's the name
And
of it.
what I'm about to send you has a free sample at least too. So
Oh, okay, I got you.
I sent
Oh,
it.
thank you. Great. So this is the link, everyone. There we go. All right, great. Fabulous. I'm glad we were able to share more about the book. And that's the name of the book as well, Saya Unveiled. And I'm going to hide that now. All right. Uh, let's see. Oh, yeah. The question I was going to ask you was what is the mind body connection?
So
And no, go ahead. What is the mind body connection?
So I would describe the mind body connection to somebody as the ideology that mind has control over the body, and that if you're not feeling your best mentally, it could transfer to a physical ailment if it's not treated.
Okay. Uh, and do you know more about like how does it convert to a physical disease eventually?
So speaking from from personal experience as well as from my book, I dealt. I've always been a chronic worrier, and throughout high school, I dealt with hormone imbalance as a result of stress and anxiety, and it was always triggered by events I had going on in my life, and I didn't treat it until I was an adult. But and then in my book, there's examples of things like how anxiety manifests for some people as vomiting, or even things like acid reflux disease when it's serious, when it's like the most serious.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's basically like you start with the mental phase and that over time it start building and eventually boom it ends up in the
Right.
physical at some point and starts building in the physical and that disease starts getting worse and worse and worse and eventually like get to cancer or one of the big ones, right? So it's kind of like building momentum over time. At some point, please take care of it, whatever your form of healing is, whatever form of fashion that you enjoy, go do it. We've talked about a few already, therapy versus even the Eastern medicine and anything in between, whatever works for you, go seek the help you need, because it is important. Without that, your life is going to be very different in the next 5 years or so.
And I will add that one of the other secondary goals in my book, in illustrating the variety of conditions that people have and the variety of things they found helpful for them, is that I don't like that people somehow act as though using Eastern methodologies of healing is better or less shameful than something like therapy and medication. And I hope that one day we get to a point in destroying the stigma where if someone can say yoga helped me through my whatever, that the person can feel equally comfortable saying that medication helped me through X, Y, and Z.
Right, right. No, that's a great point. Feel comfortable either way. Whatever your form of healing is, go towards that. In my case, it was meditation. I had gone through the whole darkness, gone through everything. I could say I was depressed. I didn't get diagnosed with it, but I was, essentially there. I didn't really call it that. I didn't really term it depression at that time because I didn't want to hold on to it. And so when I got into meditation, I started having some space between me and my thoughts, and I paid attention to my thoughts, and then observing it over time. I was able to kind of distance myself from all of these negative thoughts that were going on, and all the worrisome thoughts, all the thoughts of anxiety, and everything that was just negative in my mind. And meditation was it for me. It took me 3-4 years of meditation to finally get to the state, but I was able to do it, and I was able to kind of move past that depression, and now be a light for people like Mrinal as well. I can see a light glowing on her face, and she's being a light in the community as well in terms of mental health advocacy. Mrinal, any last thoughts, any last words that you want to share with either someone that's going through a challenge, or maybe the parent that you want to give them some compassionate words that will allow them to understand what their kid is going through? Sorry, you're on mute.
I will repeat that mental health is something everyone has just as much as everyone has physical health, and that mental health challenges are something that anybody and everybody can get no matter what their life circumstances. But in admitting that you're having this challenge is the first step to seeking the treatment you need to moving forward, rather than living in denial.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely don't live in denial. Go seek that help. Mrinal, I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your personal stories, for being vulnerable, and opening yourself up, your personal stories to the audience. And really appreciate everything that you've shared. Where can people find you? Do you have a website? There's some Instagram.
Yes, I am on both LinkedIn and Instagram. I will send you those links as well. My Instagram is MRINALG and underscore. And then you can find me on LinkedIn as well, just by typing in my first name and last name.
All right, so that's the Instagram, IG, Mrinal G underscore. Go look for her on Instagram. Please connect with her. If you need any support from her, she's always there. If you want to talk to her about her book, feel free to connect with her. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for all the guests for joining today, audience members, for all your questions, your comments. I really, really appreciate each and every one that tuned in today. Do you want to say something, Muriel?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And like he said, if you guys want to get in touch, you know how to do so. And furthermore, if you check out the book sample on Amazon and you like it and you're in the US, I'll be happy to send you an autographed one for $1 less.
Oh yeah, check that out. Thank you, Marino. Thank you so much for that special offer. We have our next interview on 317. We have Sambhav Desai, who will be talking about the 7 lessons of his life. He's essentially running for city council in a local LA city called Cerritos, and we're supporting him through his journey and really want to see him succeed. So that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much, Marino. I really appreciate all the stories you've shared. Love and abundance, everyone. And remember, everyone, drink your water. We need everyone drinking more water. And I'm going to drink another sip right now. Refreshing. All right. Thank you, everyone. Love and abundance.